We got a few key details yesterday about the upcoming ARAM mode in Deadlock called Street Brawl. So today I want to dive into those leaks, kind of what we can expect so far from the information we have about the mode, as well as kind of take a look at what the precedent for this ARAM mode is across other MOBAs, what could it look like based on what we've seen from other similar games, and then finally also talk about why this is so important for Deadlock. I don't know if y'all know, but I'm extremely bullish about this mode, and I really think that if this mode is being worked on to this degree, we may be closer to a Deadlock release than people may realize. Hey everyone, it's Connor here at Dead Unlocked, and I'm really excited to jump into this. Let's start off with the leaks and the new information we have about Street Brawl. So while you'll enjoy some great gameplay from the Trolli Open for Deadlock Night Shift, banger event by the way, I'm going to look through a couple posts on X that were made by Minesweeper, a couple other leakers, and kind of piece together the information we have so far about the Street Brawl mode, about the ARAM mode. So for Minesweeper here, more info on Street Brawl. As of now, Street Brawl is not its own map. It's just on blue lane. Rest of map is blocked off. It's still round-based with a set number of souls and boons to spend. First team to kill the walker wins the round. So essentially just a very simplistic micro version of the game. You're not going all the way to base. You're just, it ends at walker, one lane, kind of a fixed, thinner rectangle in the middle of the map. Yellow and green are inaccessible, but some areas in and around mid, excluding mid-boss, are accessible, and there are no jungle creeps as everyone's soul count is fixed. It's not unrealistic to say this will come out in December, but I have my doubts they will push it to January. So what Minesweeper's kind of mentioning here with this last bit is obviously we get the news from Yoshi. I talked about in a previous video that the next update should be coming out, or they projected it to be in December. We have to take that with a grain of salt. Development cycles, valve time, as people like to call it, could obviously reduce your result rather in that coming out a little later, but what we have here is interesting. Let's take a look at another post, kind of give some more information, then we'll kind of discuss what we have. So then in another Discord post here, just giving some more information. I'm going to skip the first part because it's pretty duplicate. They're developing two very different ideas for Street Brawl simultaneously. This was mentioned in a previous video. If you don't know the kind of two ideas, one is a really casual kind of roguelite version where you're going to load in, and then every time you level up or whatever the system is, you'll get items from a loot table to choose from. There was a mock-up made of this that had like a single weapon, spirit, and vitality item you could choose from, and then that was kind of the cycle. And according to Minesweeper, that was actually a pretty decent, at least like visual representation of what the mode is, even if some of the actual aesthetics of it look different. And then a more traditional ARAM where you just kind of again load in and you're playing the game to the walker in that kind of capacity. But yeah, and carrying on here, and supposedly not a lot of people are participating in the tests, so might have a lack of private feedback to develop these modes in a timely manner. And then a little typo here, also unclear if the plan is to have their own map for it, if they plan to have their own map for it. Not exactly sure there. We'll get to the Yamato stuff in a second, but yeah. So what this basically tells us is a couple things. So number one, Street Brawl is still in a very early access period, even for Deadlock. In an early access game, a mode is in very early access. So I wouldn't expect anything similar to how Minesweeper was saying. If this is true and they really are doing limited testing of this mode, I think it is clear that it's a priority. They also want to keep it under wraps, and that they're not quite ready to deploy this to even like the larger test server that exists. Certainly not to the live game. However, this also really makes sense considering what we just heard from developers. Developers just told us that they want to kind of cook more in the kitchen for this next major update to be really big, and so they shelved it to December. This kind of fits in with that line of thinking, right? Like it makes a lot of sense that this mode is going to be worked on in a more kind of smaller way to make sure it's really ready to ship. That way we get it in December 2025 or January 2026. So that is kind of the latest news from the Street Brawl mode. If you want to get caught up on what exactly the mode is, I've covered leaks and whatnot in the previous video. But let's also quickly take a look at this Yamato information because this is pretty interesting to take a look at as well. So I'll have the image on screen for you, but basically the Yamato information here is that we're still going to get a Yamato remodel. I mean, we've showed the image of that on the channel. Like that still is kind of the baseline accepted norm for what we can expect from Yamato. However, new information, her weapon is actually going to change. So I don't know if this is the secondary fire, like the mouse, your right click will throw these caltrips, but now these incendiary caltrips are going to be a part of Yamato's kit. Again, I don't know, this would actually make sense in some ways as her left click, as her main weapon, but I probably think they're going to just replace the mouse too with this. But honestly, it could be both. It could be a both and situation. So just a little tidbit of information, Yamato rework, also including this weapon stuff. So now that we're through the leaks, I do want to quickly talk about a couple things. Number one, what can we expect from ARAM in terms of just some other MOBAs, some other even Valve titles? What else has Valve done with ARAM in the past? What have other MOBAs done with it? Is there any hero shooter precedent for this kind of mode, right? I want to talk about that quickly. And then also, I do want to spend a little bit of time discussing a couple things about why this is so important for Deadlock. I hesitate to say too much about this, but I've got a source that I've been talking to, and they tend to think that because Deadlock is in the in the development phase that it is now, when you're looking at like final art pass and this, especially this new mode, it really should kind of get our spidey senses tingling. The Deadlock could be very, very close to an open beta or even like a full sort of release, like Deadlock being available en masse. This is according to a source. I'm still working on some more details as far as this goes, but there are people in insider circles talking about the fact that because this ARAM mode is being developed, we really should be kind of taking seriously the fact that Deadlock is getting close to release. This is obviously something that could be debated, and I would like to put the normal kind of grain of salt with that and all the other leaks we've covered. All of this stuff is subject to change, subject to being incorrect. This is just reporting on sources. But anyway, I want to quickly mention that. But let's kind of dive into like what we can expect from other modes. What have we seen across the board in other games in terms of ARAM gameplay and ARAM modes? So what is ARAM? Why should you care? What's the precedent in other games? So let's talk about this quickly. ARAM is a mode, stands for all random, all mid. It's obviously just a single lane, simplified version of a MOBA where you can really focus on kind of the micro play, and it's meant to be a much more casual experience. This actually gets started with League of Legends a long time ago. I mean, over 10 years ago. This is founded in League of Legends as a kind of custom game, arcade game, where you just had, the all random heroes in mid. And this quickly became a very popular mode within League of Legends, was added to the game and made kind of more prominent in that way. As far as what has Valve done with this, I really don't have much information here. I'm not a Dota 2 player. It seems like it was in a custom arcade mode. Players have kind of taken the League of Legends route just a little bit later and made this in Dota 2. This is also, potentially, I'm also not a massive, I don't come from TF2, so I apologize for misspeaking a little bit here, but this also comes from probably similar to like an arena mode in Team Fortress 2. In other games, I really can't think of an equivalent though. I mean, in Overwatch, you have quick play, which is just running one once, but there was no custom game made for ARAM in Overwatch. Also because Overwatch, I don't know how you would do that. It would have to be, pushing an objective in a straight line or something like that. But Overwatch games are also quicker anyway, and the game also already kind of feels like an ARAM style mode all the time. So this comes to play in League of Legends in the beginning, but like I said, for Valve, there's really not a huge precedent for supporting this in-game. Like, this is not something that Valve has officially put into a game before, if I'm understanding this correctly so far. So please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments from Dota players. I just don't know that game as well. I'm really sorry. But I think this is significant that Valve is making this. This is a clear, statement that they want to support the new player experience. They want to grow this game. And I think that's really important to point out because they didn't put this game in Dota, and now they're putting it in Deadlock. That might be an interesting statement, kind of a veiled statement from developers saying, Deadlock is actually where we're going to commit our time. Dota was something that almost, not that it was unfinished at all. Dota is a phenomenal game, one of the most profitable esports of all time, like a really great product, right? This is not taking away from Dota. It just might be signaling that Deadlock is kind of the next evolution for Valve. And that is a sentiment that I've been seeing around more and more. That source I mentioned was telling me kind of a very similar thing, that Valve really is pouring more and more resources into Deadlock. That's something we've seen from Gabe Follower in an interview. We've covered this on the channel quite a bit, this kind of idea that Valve really is leaning into Deadlock as kind of their future game. And I think actually ARAM is an important piece of that equation. Again, it's not something they've done before. This is a first-time thing. And it is, I feel like ARAM inevitably is geared towards the new player experience, or at the very least, the casual player experience, to learn the micro of the game, get better. And I think they understand the importance of this in a game like Deadlock that's going to require players to know the macro, kind of the larger strategy of the game, how to maneuver the map, when to go for jungle, when to go for walkers, like all those kind of MOBA elements. That's important, but you also have to give players the opportunity to get good at the micro. You have some really complex heroes that require a lot of practice. Like if you're going to play Pocket, or if you're going to play Paradox, these characters that require like some comboing and some skill shot hitting and like a sequence of buttons that you need to hit in a certain way to do certain things, you have to practice that, and bot games really aren't going to do it. You have to be able to practice this in game. ARAM achieves that, so I think it's a huge deal. Before I quit yapping, let me talk a little bit more about why this is so important for Deadlock's future. So I think it's important that I clarify here when I talk about like some information from a source and like, you know, Valve committing a lot more to Deadlock and these new things. These are obviously interesting facts as well, and like I there's the usual grain of salt with source reporting and like all that kind of stuff, but even just plugging my own thoughts into this, it really does seem so significant that we're going to be getting an ARAM mode. Not just for what it means for Deadlock. Obviously, it's going to help new players. It should help, you know, increase player count. It should help with retention. It should do a lot of things for the game at kind of a stability level that is and a growth level that are very important. But I also think it's just really, really important. I want to drive this point home that this feels like something that would be done in the later stages of development for the game. So if I'm kind of walking through in my mind the sequence of how Valve has been doing this, it is kind of refining each element of the game in sequence. So you do the map, you do the shop, you do heroes, and now you're doing kind of final art pass and some reworks of mechanics in the map. Like we had the vents change, we're soon going to have a large scale change to the base, to patron, new team names, new HUD, like more new heroes coming in. But like we're at that kind of final art pass stage, kind of melding into now we're looking at new game modes. I don't think Valve would add a new game mode if the map wasn't finished, right? Like it seems odd they would be like, okay, here's this ARAM mode, and also, oh, but we're actually going to go back now and change the map around and do all these different things. I feel like we're at a stage where Valve now begins to shift their attention to bigger picture things about the game, things that we have not even really begun to think about as a community for the game. I think getting cosmetics starts to become a thing that gets closer to being on the table. More new game modes like this. Obviously, there's going to be still fine-tuning around the map, and this is in no way like a finished game, quote unquote. But I think people may want to give this some credence that this game might be a little bit more finished than they might think. So again, this just seems like an order of operations observation for me that you wouldn't do a mode like this unless you were pretty dang close to the game being at least ready for some kind of open beta. This also seems like the exact kind of thing you would launch with open beta, because you're opening it up to the player base and now you're offering them a mode saying, hey, here's this thing, learn on this, play X number of ARAM games before you're allowed to play a normal game or something like that, learn the game, learn some heroes, etc. So all this to say, between everything I've heard from sources, the source I mentioned, as well as just other sources in the community that we report on frequently, this does feel like something that is absolutely being worked on. This feels real at this point, even though we still don't have like a gameplay image, which I hate reporting on things without actual images to show people because it just feels like I'm talking about vapor. But I do think this is still important for us to talk about as a community because it is going to come to the mode. Valve seemed very keen on hearing community feedback, so I think it's a good chance now to like discuss what could be good, what we're looking to avoid, all that kind of stuff I think is on the table for this mode. But in any case, this felt like it was important to talk about, and it feels like, again, we could be a little closer than people realize to Deadlock moving into an open beta of some kind, which is crazy, crazy exciting to talk about. I still continue to hear more and more sentiments that people think this could happen in January or December, which is wild to think. It just doesn't feel real. That could be a possibility. It tends, for me, it feels more like summer, but that's all speculation at the end of the day. But before I yap any longer, because honestly, it's very easy for me to yap about this mode, I'm genuinely so excited for what Street Brawl can mean for Deadlock. I will go ahead and wrap up the video. Before I do that, I want to thank, there's a subscriber on the channel, Shelby, came out to the event that I was running last weekend, an FGC event in Oklahoma. Thank you so much for coming out, Shelby. It was crazy cool to meet someone from the channel in real life. It's just not something that I thought would be happening, but that's awesome. The event was awesome, by the way. We had almost 400 people out. Oklahoma FGC is so cool. This is one of my first FGC events to really be a part of, helping run and put together and properly. So it was so sick. FGC is really cool. But anyway, thank you all so much for tuning in. Let me know in the comments what you think about Street Brawl and what you're kind of hoping for the mode. And if I had any, improper statements about Dota 2, I'm really sorry. Correct me in the comments. I'd love to be corrected. But as always, from our house to yours, we'll see you all next time here at Dead Unlocked.